Senator John McCain, as I mentioned earlier, has had the rare experience of debating Barack Obama, but he also debated Mitt Romney when they were both running against each other in 2008. I spoke with the Arizona Republican earlier tonight and asked him whether the real differences between these two candidates are on substance or merely stylistic. Let's listen.
Well, I think there's substantive differences in that I think that Mitt Romney has a very different view than Barack Obama does on America's role in the world. For example, I'm sure that Mitt Romney would have spoken up for those 1.5 million people who were demonstrating in the streets of Tehran back in 2009. I'm sure that Mitt Romney would have listened to his advisors as far as the troop strength and withdrawals from Afghanistan, which he overruled on 4 or 5 occasions. I know that Mitt Romney would have been able to achieve a residual force in Iraq rather than having the unraveling and the return of al-Qaeda, which is taking place here. And I can assure you that Mitt Romney would have known that this was not a spontaneous demonstration triggered by a hateful video within 10 or 11 days after it happened. He's a lot smarter than that, and I think, frankly, the president is too.
Well, let me take you to that attack on the consulate in Benghazi, Libya. You've been fairly critical of the administration's response. What do you think are the outstanding questions that could be addressed tonight in the debate on that attack in Libya?
Well, first of all, why didn't the president do something about the deteriorating situation where there's already 2 attacks? The British closed their embassy. The attack on the British embassy, the International Red Cross had already withdrawn as well. I don't expect the president to know about numbers of people there, but the consulate there literally became a death trap. So why didn't he do anything before? At the time, it was September 11th. Didn't we have some forces? It was an 8-hour battle that went on there, attack. And didn't we have some forces there? And shouldn't we have tried to at least bring some forces to the area? Third of all, afterwards, they sending out Susan Rice 5 days afterwards. I mean, you didn't have to have a CIA intelligence. You didn't have to have anything. You had to have 2 eyeballs and enough information about warfare to know that this was not a spontaneous demonstration triggered by a hateful video. You don't have spontaneous demonstrations with mortars. So the fact that the president continued to voice that, despite his allegation about terrorism in the Rose Garden, when actually he says he condemned terrorist attacks, but then went to the UN and talked about hateful video, he either is grossly incompetent or he's willfully deceiving the American people. Meanwhile, Hillary throws herself under the bus, and then, of course, now it's the CIA's fault. Where does the buck stop?
You know, Senator, there's another hot war underway, which is in Afghanistan, obviously, and I'm wondering what you think the differences between a Romney approach and an Obama approach would be, because in the end, they're both at least nominally in favor of a 2014 withdrawal deadline. How would a Romney administration get to that point differently than a second Obama administration?
Well, first of all, Jerry, I'd like to give you a little straight talk, and I think you and I know the American people want out, and I understand that. They are war weary, and Mitt Romney is going to stick to the 2014 withdrawal date. But what he would have done differently is he would have given them the full 40,000 rather than 30,000, which the military asked for when they started a surge in Afghanistan. He would have followed the military leader's advice and not had early withdrawals from Afghanistan, such as he mandated. And most importantly, he would have talked about success. He would have talked about achieving goals. Instead, all he does is talk about leaving. There's the famous story that I know you've heard of the Taliban prisoner and the American interrogator. And the Taliban prisoner says, "You've got the watches, we've got the time."
Yeah, exactly. Well, so who knew, Senator McCain? A foreign policy debate did break out in this campaign. After all, it'll be fun to watch tonight. Appreciate your joining us to talk about it a little bit ahead of time.
Thanks for having me on. Could I just mention one other thing real quick, Jerry?
Sure.
It's unraveling throughout the region. It's not just there. The al-Qaeda is back in Mali. They've taken over all across North Africa. They're resurging in Iraq. They are, and of course, not to mention our relations with Russia are continue to deteriorate as well as Iran 4 years later. No progress there. So, but Mitt Romney's main job tonight is to make sure the American people to know that he's not trigger happy, but he believes in peace through strength. He's got to balance that out.
All right, well, it was a conversation worth having. It'll be fascinating to watch. Thanks for joining us.